I spawned in on the beach and immediately got to work harvesting the basic resources necessary to make the Ark starting tools. Stuff like fiber, thatch, and hide, and I crafted a stone pickaxe, a hatchet, a spear, and a torch, and wasted no time putting the smackdown on some easy prey. When I opened my inventory, this started to happen. I don't know why it started happening, but it just did. I noticed this leads caught in the shallows and took a moment to gaze at the sheer size and the majestic creature before me, before punching it in the nose and stealing some of its flesh to feed me, of course. I wasn't done with my reign of terror though, because a few seconds later I started chasing chickens and personally saw to their extinction firsthand. Before long, I could craft myself a bow and arrows to better defend myself, and I started walking down the beach looking for a parasaur because they're a great first day tame. I found this group of dodos and began the peace negotiations, and liberated their meat and hide from their bodies. Not because I needed it, because I was bored actually. I eventually found this low-level para, but it was just gonna have to do. So I bullied it and began smacking it with my bow to knock it out. After our new para-friend tamed, I made a raft to move faster and safer along the coast, while I searched for cinema crops to tame, and for some reason, my raft began to drift. Not like going adrift at sea, but like the initial D kind. Instead of fixing the superior Ark game, they made Ark Survival Ascended, and expect us to pay $30 for cowboy chaps and a flying dinner plate. Anyway, I spotted 2 tech paras on the beach, and I tried to tame them because I wanted easy metal production later. And nothing is easier than forcing tech dinos to produce infinite resources from the safety of your base, right? Well anyway, I caught this level 174 tech para, and started to spank it, but it eventually got free, and ran right into a raptor. The raptor could have it, so I just left it to its fate, and I got back on the raft. After sailing the open water for a few minutes, I made landfall on this tiny island, and made a little camp for myself so I could cook some meat, and rest for the night. Oh, I also tamed this low-level PT, but I'd never use him. On the start of day 2, I was accosted by a pair of dilos that got turned into resources, and some ants that did the same. To my surprise, before I got turned into breakfast, the ants had run away, and I acted fast to take at least one of them down. This chitin would prove to be very useful later on, because I wanted to tame a Sinnoh. I said goodbye to my para and my PT, and hopped on my raft, because I decided I wanted to make my first starting base in the grasslands. Traveling to the location took most of the day, and I had to abandon my raft. Cutting through the center of the island would have been a lot faster than going along the coast. Little did I know at the time that my raft would grow up to have abandonment issues and have trouble forming normal relationships with other people. But this story is about me and not my raft. I started running across the lava-ravaged landscape on foot, and I almost got killed by this magmasaur stepping on me. The damage from the magmasaur and the crippling heat left me a broken man. So I hightailed it into the verdant plains, and as the sun was setting, I made it to my target destination, and began setting up a small base for myself. Using the resources I had gathered earlier, I made a forge and placed the metal lovingly in the oven to bake them for the rest of the night. Then I ran to the swamp to farm some crystal, and I got jump scared by this stupid Titanoboa. I did get away though. I stayed close to the swamp into day 3 and farmed animals for their hide. When I gathered all that I would need for a good while, I decided it was time to return to camp and get myself some much needed upgrades, like metal tools and a spyglass. With my equipment upgraded and my body replenished, I ran back down to the swamp and decided to tame my first Sinnoh. After searching for a few minutes, I found this little guy hanging out by the side of a cliff, and all I had to do was just stand still, and I waited for him to approach me. After a few feedings of chitin, this little dude joined the Glam Fam, and I dubbed him Wingman. I put Wingman to work and took the alternate route to get out of the swamp, and headed back to base. The metal I had been preparing was finished, and I upgraded from rags to a fresh set of metal armor. I was ready to venture into the grasslands to find myself a Maywing finally, and I wasn't too particular on the level right now, just any Maywing would do. The Sinnoh was fine, sure, but I wanted something with a little bit more speed and heft to it. This level 20 was asking nicely to be tamed, so I shot it in the eye with an arrow. It eventually went down, and I waited patiently for it to tame. I did keep an eye out though. I knew cars and gigas spawned in the area, and I didn't want to go back to the loading screen, if you feel me. The area was free from danger, and the Maywing tamed. I named him Quaffio, and together we ran back to base because I forgot to bring a Maywing saddle. Before long, we made it back, and we were airborne lickety-split. Of course, I am playing on boosted settings, so a day 3 Maywing is fairly normal for me. I'll have the settings linked in the description below. Quaffia was my early game berry farmer too, and we set out farming as many narco berries as we could to make even more narcotics. My plan was to tame a better Maywing and have myself a breeding pair. I set out looking for a way better Maywing, and this 130 caught my eye, so I tried to set up some billboards to trap it, and of course, everything goes perfect on the first try every time. I managed to get the Maywing stuck under 3 billboards, and I started to knock it out. Kept my eye out for Ovis. Of course, when you're looking for one, you can just never find them. But I did find this Sarco fighting some Kentos. I scavenged the remains for some prime meat, but I only got one. One whole prime meat out of this Sarco, and that just wasn't going to cut it. So I flew around looking for some Ovis. Luckily, a small herd of them had just spawned in and, well, you can probably imagine what happens next. I fed our new platypus friend the mutton, and before too long, Taco Tuesday rose for action. I found another Maywing. This one was max level and I had to tame it. So you already know how it goes. Billboard, knock it out, tame it. I named this one Spaghetti. I needed to make some cryopods at some point, so I headed into the desert to hunt mantis for organic polymer, and a few seconds after landing, this happened. Now I was stranded in the desert, and the only one to get me out of there was myself and Wingman. So I started running, gliding, and island hopping back to camp. By the time I made it back, it was already day 5. I spent the start of day 5 flying around the Lost Island looking for tech dinos, mostly for some easy oil and other materials. So, to spare you 40 minutes of me flying around looking for tech dinos, I just dove into the ocean, and I harvested some really easy. In hindsight, I probably should have done this sooner and saved myself a bunch of time. After I gathered the oil I needed, I flew to a supply crate and crafted some cryopods. While flying back to base, I noticed a group of aloes stacked up on top of each other, with a 150 wrapped up in a pretty bow. I didn't have the supplies to tame it, and I ran home to get set up. Came back and tamed it in a peculiar way. Whatever. It works. The only problem with taming the prize aloe like this, its clingy boyfriend wouldn't let her go. So I did what I had to do. And with the spare mutton I had, I threw it into her inventory and waited very patiently for her to tame. After waiting for half the day, I named her Ceres, and potted her up, and scouted around for a more permanent base location. I didn't want to settle on a spot that I've done in a previous playthrough. I chose this nice spot by the river. I unpotted Ceres to stand guard, and flew back to my starter base to gather up my stuff. When I flew back, I actually got lost, and I spent a lot of time trying to find my spot. I guess using a dark-colored Allosaurus in a green forest with a bunch of big shady patches wasn't the greatest of ideas, but I did eventually find my base, and I made landmarks so I wouldn't get lost again. Now that I was established, I made some refining forges to start my metal production and placed down a brand new smithy. The next morning, I went deep into the jungle to tame a really high-level tech stego I had found, and I decided to safari tame it for some excitement. While waiting for the stego to tame, I returned to base and made my Maywings breed to get an even better and imprinted one. My imprint settings were a bit broken, and I'd just fix it later. I just needed more Maywings, just in case I'd lose one out in the field. And unfortunately, later on in the day, we would have a casualty, and Wingman died. See, I have this problem with Sinnohs where I forget to feed them sometimes, but this would be the first and the last time this would happen in this playthrough. Hopefully. After raising Maywings, I waited all day for the stego to tame, and when it was ready for pickup, I flew over with the Maywing, grabbed it, and returned to base for the rest of the night. I needed to get my farming dinos up and taken care of, so I flew over to the volcano and found a decent thorny dragon and tamed it up. When she tamed, I named her Chica. The only thing I needed now was clay to make her a saddle. So, I flew over to the desert and began farming. Duh. I also tamed a few more Sinnohs so I could breed them in case I forget to feed them again. I tamed a few low levels just to get around. And I found this 150 female. While taming her, she must have been attacked by something because the progress bar reset to 0. And, unfortunately, I had to chase her all across the desert. But we eventually got her. As soon as she tamed, I was attacked by a wolf and panicked, so I killed it with the help of my Sinnohs and a cryopod. I guarantee you haven't seen this ever in any 100 Days videos. Guaranteed. Leave a like for cracked Ark gameplay and defeating beasts with cryopods. Let's go. The first thing I did for day 9 was go to the desert maze. Don't worry, in this video I won't talk about it as much as I did in the first 100 days video I made, because there's only so much to talk about, really. When I got back to base, this annoying parasaur was wandering around, so I told all of my tames to attack. This was a really dumb idea, because all of my tames chased it over a waterfall, and I lost a few Maywings, like Quaffio, or Quaffio, and an unnamed one. I liked Quaffio. Oh well. I used the materials that I had gathered in the desert to start crafting clay for the thorny dragon saddle. Once saddled up, I took Chica out to gather some wood, and I gotta say, I am actually very impressed with her results. I also wanted a wyvern egg sooner rather than later, so I grabbed my best Maywing, Pizza, and headed out to the volcano to see if there were any good eggs worth stealing. The first egg I saw was the one. It was a 165 fire wyvern egg, which was amazing because fire is my favorite type of wyvern. I looked around to make sure the coast was clear, and I grabbed the egg, and I got the heck out of there. When I got back to base, I made more than a dozen torches to hatch the egg, and before long, I was gifted baby Crimsica. At the time, I was playing a lot of Helldivers, so some of you might recognize this name. She was being very fussy for her first imprinting, so I stood around all day waiting for the cryo timers to reset, because she was always asking for wyvern milk, and I wasn't about to go get any. I'd end up imprinting her a bit later. I wanted to build safety walls around the cliff of my base, so my tames wouldn't randomly run into the river down below. This project went into the night, and it wasn't pretty to look at, but it would have to do. Safety is the priority. Crimsica was finally fully grown, and I used her to fly into the mountains near my base to grab an Anki. This Anki was just going to be the run-of-the-mill standard farming tame, so I didn't really care much about the levels too much. I flew back to the safety of my base to knock it out. Now, the next order of business was getting my house built so I could have a place to craft and hide out. While building, I went for a stilt house to keep bugs and other things that crawled on the jungle floor off of me. I know that doesn't happen in Ark, but I had to at least roleplay a little bit, right? I need to feel immersed. I spent a good majority of the day getting the place built, and towards sunset I moved all of my crafting stations inside. By this time the Anki was up and ready for action. I took it out for some quick metal farming before calling it a night. I took Crimsica into the desert to farm polymer and killed deathworms to level her up, and I also needed their horns because I was going to attempt to build a polymer farm a little later, with the intentions that I wouldn't have to come back to the desert to keep farming polymer. After a good day of bug stomping, I ended up with an amazing amount of poly. And yes, for clarification, I am using Ultra Stacks, because there are some things that I just won't concede in these playthroughs. Ultra Stacks, NS Plus being some of them. It was time to head back home, and the only problem is that Crimsica kept running out of energy mid-flight, so I had to get a bit creative. I would dismount, since wyverns wouldn't land on water, and I flew up into the air with my Sinnoh. And when she'd get some of her energy back, I would just fly towards land, so she could rest. After a while, we made it back in one piece. I still needed a designated stone farmer, and I didn't want to waste time with a Doty, so I went straight for the big leagues. I wanted a Magmasaur. This is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in any of my Ark playthroughs. I just went in, and against all odds, I managed to steal a decent egg right out from under the Magmasaur's nose. As you can see, I came within centimeters of spawning back at the beach at level 1. When I got back home, I threw the egg down in front of all my forges, and yet it was still too cold. I placed down a lot of standing torches near the forge and finally had enough to hatch my new Magmasaur egg. Right out of the egg, he was demanding ambergris, and I had to teach the young lad that we don't always get what we want in life. A little brainwashing later, and he saw reason. Baby Burninate needed food. So with Crimsica, we flew back to the volcano and started disrespecting the residents. After a few minutes of wyvern busting, it was time to fly back home, and I would feed baby Burninate sulfur harvested from the bodies of many wyverns. While waiting for BB to grow, I was in desperate need of cementing paste and crystal to craft a fabricator so I could escape the dark ages and join the modern world. And I stole from beavers, and for some reason the beavers that lived in the southern part of the island weren't spawning. I flew all the way home and actually forgot to harvest some crystal, so I took Crimsica and my Anki out once again to farm some on top of this mountain. Finally, I had all I needed to make a Fabby. I still needed to make gasoline, which required oil, and I was fresh out. Luckily, the jungle near my base was swarmed with Textegos. I also made myself a long neck rifle and a ton of trank darts. It was time to start thinking about taming some boss dinos. And while out in the world, I found 2 tech paras, a male and a female, and tamed them up to make an easy metal and oil farm for later. On the morning of day 13, I took Burn and Nate out to harvest a lot of stone. I also ran up the mountain near my base to see if I could get there easily with a magmasaur for future metal farming. While I was descending back down the mountain, I got ambushed by 2 Rexes, and I stood my ground. These Rexes were slam dunking us back down the mountain, so Burn and Nate and I made a run for it. We managed to lose one of them, and we took down the other. I decided that we had had enough excitement for one morning, and I let Bernie rest for a bit. It was time to build a pen for my tech paras so the babies wouldn't run all over the base, and this took up most of the day. The idea was to build a pair of ramps on an elevated platform, and the fertilized tech para eggs would drop to the ground and incubate with torches, or an AC unit when I finally got there. Now that the structure itself was complete, all I had to do was test it, and it actually worked out pretty wonderfully. But I would make some small improvements throughout the next 100 days. I know this may seem morally dubious, but trust me, they're robots. They can't feel pain. Famous last words. It's only a matter of time before Skynet takes over. Today I had a very specific goal in mind, and that was to find a boss dino. I used Allosaurus last time, and while I do think they're neat, they just didn't quite make the cut. So I had an idea to tame a Theri and raise an army. I flew to the jungle on the other side of the island, since that was the Theri promised land, and right away I spotted a juicy 135 Theri. Apparently, this Rex thought it was really juicy too, because it started to eat it. I could do nothing but look on in sheer disappointment as it turned into Rex poop right before my very eyes. In another valley, not too far away, I spotted this 140 male Theri, and potted up my Maywing to safari tame it. This was a really stupid decision, because this thing was running all over the place, and I lost it a few times in the jungle. My persistence paid off, and it eventually went down, and it took a very Theri long time to tame. The Theri had finally tamed, but this area was super dangerous, and I didn't want to stick around for too long at all. After I got home, I let it out of its cryopod and started farming nearby dinos' plants for materials, and to get some levels too, of course. Later on, I crafted a net gun because I wanted to go tame a Managarmr, to get around the island even faster. I'm fairly certain the Managarmr is one of the fastest mounts around, but I'm sure if that information's correct, you guys will let me know. I also wanted one because I didn't tame one the last time I was here, so why not, right? After crafting the harpoon gun and some net projectiles, I crafted a saddle and headed into the mountains looking for the perfect mana. I found this 135 running around and I sprung into action. The mana unfortunately had picked a fight with this mammoth, and honestly I don't know what I was thinking when I decided to try and net gun the mamma. I guess I thought I could aggro the mammoth onto me, but that was the wrong assumption, and it actually flattened the mana I wanted to tame. Anyway, a lot later I found this 145 fighting an Amarga, and to give the mana an upper hand, I netted the Amarga, and these Sabertooths gave me the assist, and finished the fight. After knocking out the mana, the Sabertooths started to attack my Maywing, so I had to send them to the Shadow Realm. I threw some mutton into the mana, and before long she tamed, and I rode her back home. And honestly, I just had a lot of fun zooming around at Mach 3. I forgot how awesome Managarmrs are. After farming a ton of baby tech paras for metal and oil, I finally had enough resources to craft myself a chemistry bench. And I don't feel like padding out the script, defining every small detail that happens in my day-to-day life on the Lost Island, so we're just gonna move right along. I named the female mana I had just tamed Molly after my faithful pet companion. Molly says hello, by the way. She thanks you for the 1,000 likes on my Fjordur video. She did get that cheese. Back on track, I wanted an imprinted mana to ride around for the rest of these 100 days, so back into the mountains I went. I found this level 55 male fighting this mammoth, and I decided to give the male a hand. He got the killing blow on the mammoth and healed up back to full health. Before he could get away, I netted him, knocked him out, and tamed him. And I named him Kite. We all returned home, and I left Kite and Molly alone for a while and decided to build myself some crop plots for advanced crafting recipes. I had an idea to place crop plots on raised platforms to keep them off the ground, and because it looked kinda neat, I think. As I was building, Molly actually had twins. The other one flew off into the jungle somewhere, I don't know where he went. But the other one that stayed, I named her Drift. When the day's chores were complete, I flew into the desert and did a quick maze run. I got a stupid powerful long neck blueprint and a really good Bronto platform saddle. The next day I flew back to the grasslands to get more mutton because I wanted to tame some Dinopithecus. Mutton isn't required, but it's the next best thing to kibble, which I didn't have yet. So I flew to the redwoods and found this high level female. After a few moments of mutton, this mandrill of massive size was tamed, and I named her Quinoa. Quinoa was whispering something in my ear. She wanted a mate, and who was I to deny some monkey love? The alternative is that she would rip my arms out of my sockets and eat my face. I found a high-level male, and you already know how this goes. I named this male Robungo. I brought both of them home and finished the day by smelting some living metal. Now that I had a ton of metal sitting around, I decided to get fancy with my irrigation and make it all metal. I spent most of the morning laying some pipe, and if I were a super crass YouTuber, I would say your mom joke is a follow-up. That's not me. When I finished with some home renovations, Drift and I went into the desert to tame some dung beetles. Yeah, I know, they're in the jungle near my base, but to me, this was faster because they're easier to spot against the sand. And when I got back home, I noticed a huge drop in frames, and it was actually my tech parafarm. I managed to turn the breeding off and cleaned up shop and noticed a huge difference right away. I left base again to tame a Bronto, since I had that ascendant saddle. It would seem like a waste not to use it. I found this 150 just chilling and I had to have it, so I started knocking it out. But after a few minutes it ran into the water and passed out, and yeah, you could probably tell how this goes. These Brontos were a very common dino, right? Haha. I didn't have to look too far for a decent one. It wasn't a 150, but it'll do. And I knocked it out and waited for it to tame. I spent most of day 19 just building. I was making a giant pen for when I would need to level boss dinos. I literally did this all day. So let's just skip to nighttime when the Bronto was ready to tame. Drift and I returned, and that led us all the way into day 20. I threw some Majo berries into the Bronto's inventory. Are they Majo berries or Maho berries? This debate was never settled. Alright, anyway. I threw some I threw berries into the Bronto's inventory and waited for it to tame. And when it did, I took it home to drop the big fella off. Farmed an insane amount of berries. Oh yeah, I also tamed a pair of Phiomia at some point. And they're Phiomia, so literally who cares? I won't talk about them that much. I know I said I wouldn't talk about running the maze a whole lot, but this time I got myself a very nice Ascendant Rex saddle blueprint. I know using Rexes are boring because every other Arc 100 Days YouTuber uses them, I get it. But I used Aloes last time, and I have a really nice Rex Ascendant saddle. But man, I would have to be super dumb not to use Rexes when the Arc Gods hand me something this nice. This is divine providence. Oh, I also got an Ascending Giga saddle, so that's cool too, I guess. When I got home, I felt that it was time to crop the mop, if you catch my meaning, so I cut my hair. I wanted to craft myself a farmer, and that would tend to my crops so I wouldn't have to. And I eventually wanted to build myself a nanny to help raise babies too, of course. Yeah, I know, I'm a deadbeat dad. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. I almost didn't come back with the milk this time. I flew around looking for some really good Rexes to tame. Sadly, a lot of them were pretty bad. So I started killing the bad Rexes, trying to get better ones to spawn in. In the late afternoon, I spotted this 145 female Rex, and I went in to tame her. She was fighting some mammoths, and I waited for her to finish up before I started the safari tame. When she went down, I checked her stats, and they were kinda bad. I wouldn't know if she was a keeper until she tamed, so I flew down from the mountain to find some Ovis. After a really long time, she tamed up and had an amazing melee stat. 398. Well, I'm glad I took a chance with this one. The only missing ingredient was a high-level male. So I did another sweep of the island looking for one, and this went on into the night, but I didn't find any that quite fit the bill. When I got home, I named the female that I had just tamed Roberta. This may be a nuclear take, but I think the Jurassic Park Rex's name Rexy is really stupid. I think Roberta is way better. Don't at me. I put a pin in finding a male Rex for now because I wanted to find a Rhyniognatha, so I could take its pheromone gland to lure in a female. I wanted to get one at some point, mostly because I've never seen one in game for myself. I flew low over the swamplands and around the island. I didn't find any. They say they're as rare as Gigas. With no luck, I returned back to base to tame even more Sinnohs because I lost my main one. Yeah, I logged out for a moment, and when I logged back in, she was just gone. Yeah, I don't know. I became the Sinnoh Whisperer in the jungle. When I got back home, I made the highest level Sinnoh's breed so I could have an imprinted one. The next day, I flew across the island to the castle to find a male Rex, and find one I did because this one was a level 145. I parked the Maywing on the top of the waterfall away from immediate danger and began safari taming this male Rex. I took a look around for anything dangerous in the area, and when I thought the coast was clear, I went in to look at the Rex. When all of a sudden, this Carno literally materialized out of the aether, giving me the jump scare of my life. I hopped on my Maywing and led it away from the Rex, and I quickly flew back home to gather some mutton that I had stored away. I fed the big fella, and before long I had my male Rex. And he tamed out with some very impressive stats, 405 melee and 7000 HP. When the sun was going down, Drift and I headed once more into the desert to farm organic polymer. While jumping around with Drift, we found a 150 female Rex and I had to tame it. When she tamed, she had a very good health stat. Oh yeah, I also tamed this Tech Rex because why not, I guess. Then I literally did nothing for the rest of the day while I was waiting for it to tame. In the morning I did some metal farming and had enough to craft myself an industrial cooker. I also made a lot of cryopods to keep my base organized. I had a lot of dinos scattered around the shop and I wanted to keep things tidy. I had some caving coming up, so I picked a Dinopithecus that would be my designated caving dino. And well, this one fit the bill. I named him Kakarot. Then, later in the afternoon, I also placed an industrial grill to keep up with all the raw meat. Today was dedicated to running the artifact maze here on the Lost Island, mostly because it was next to my base. And for me, it's arguably the most difficult set of artifacts to get on this map. Once preparations were completed, I hopped over with Drift and submerged into the dark waters once again. The last time I was here, I did this maze on foot, so this time I wanted to see if having a tame would make it a lot easier. There were some pros and cons. The pros first. Nothing would attack me since Kakarot was a Dinopithecus, and if you didn't know, these guys have the threat level of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Almost anything on the Lost Island ignores them. The cons. You would get stuck on walls and stuff. So I did a balancing act of traversing the maze on foot and on the back of Kakarot. Well, the last time I ran this maze was a year ago, so needless to say, I got very lost. And after wandering around for a bit, I found the first artifact I needed. And after struggling with the puzzle room, I got my hands on the final artifact, and I would never have to return to this horrible place again, I hope. By the time I found my way out of the maze, it was already day 27. Before bidding this place adieu, I gathered some black pearls that I would use later, and I returned home to drop off my loot and make some much needed repairs. My armor was almost non-existent because of the Arthropleura in the maze, and I didn't stay too long at base because I wanted to keep the ball rolling hunting artifacts. I had the next one all planned out. I wanted to get the artifact of the Devourer, and it was in a sunken ship on the bottom of the ocean, so I made myself a few scuba tanks and set out to claim it. When we got to the location, I dove into the dark waters and began my search. It didn't take long. I found the ship and entered the captain's quarters, and upon breaking the floorboards, I grabbed the artifact. And then I swam back to Drift. Since I was close to the desert, I decided to do another maze run for potential loot. Most of it was just junk until I got this amazing blueprint for flak gloves. Then I just returned home, and I quickly crafted this much needed upgrade. Today I had the mission of taming some mantis. In my first 100 days video, I mentioned taming them to make an organic polymer farm when I came back, and I wanted to put it to the test. So, decked out in full ghillie armor, I sprayed myself with some bug repellent and started force-feeding mantis deathworm horns through their business end. I got super lucky and found this 150, even though honestly level didn't matter too much because I'm just saying this now, these mantis that I'm taming will not have a very good life. When taming this low-level female, she aggroed all of the aggressive desert dwellers in the area, and we had a slight scuffle. Knowing my luck, I thought she would die, but by sheer stroke of luck, it was on my side. We came out of that fight pretty rosy, I'd say. And of course, maze run. Amazing compound bow blueprint, check. I will say, using the compound bow is a lot funner than using a crappy shotgun, and I'd use one for the majority of this playthrough. Comment compound bow supremacy if you agree. On day 29, I started gathering more artifacts to add to my collection. Here I snagged myself the artifact of the pack. I was still wearing ghillie, and I had bug repellent in my inventory, so it made running this cave an absolute breeze. The next artifact on my list was the artifact of the hunter. Once again, traversing this cave was a breeze because of my current kit. I found this Megalania just chilling, and y'all know the drill. When I got to the artifact location, it just wasn't there, and I took my frustrations out on this other Megalania. I decided to do a few laps around the cave to see if it would spawn in. Nope. I also tried to dispatch this third Megalania, but karmic retribution caught up with me because I contracted a horrible case of mega rabies. The bigger, stronger, older brother to normal rabies, I guess. And I wasn't going to be leaving with the artifact, so I just spawned it in. Who cares? I didn't let that stop me, however. Drift and I jumped over to the Aberration Cave to grab the artifact of the Strong. In the deeper part of the cave, I encountered a very close brush with death. You see, bug repellent repels bats and bugs, but it doesn't repel raptors, and if you know anything about aberration raptors, they have this very annoying ability to pounce on top of you and stunlock you as they chew you to death. With my Sinnoh, I got a little bit too close to the ground, and a raptor managed to teleport to me and knock me out of the air. At the very last second, I managed to clench my cheeks and hold spacebar for dear life, saving myself from certain death. I killed the raptors and switched over to my flak armor. Deeper into the cave, I grabbed the artifact of the strong and fought my way out. By the time I left the cave, it was already day 30. The very next day, I was doing the swamp hop when I stumbled upon this male Rhyniognatha, so I killed him and took his pheromone. If you didn't know what this is for, I will explain it very briefly. It attracts a female Rhyniognatha to lay eggs inside of your tames. The tame then gestates a baby Rhyniognatha inside of its gut. And when the time is right, a baby Rhyniognatha will explode horrifically from the innards. It sounds pretty gruesome, right? Well, that's because it is. I just so happened to know where a female was, and I had a Bronto back at base that I was going to use to raise the baby. Once back at base, I began prepping myself for this monumentous task. Full disclosure, I am playing on boosted rates, so a baby will spawn very quickly. On a normal playthrough, it wouldn't be this fast. I crafted a net gun, net projectiles, and a few assault rifles. Once locked and loaded, I potted up my Bronto and headed to the female's last known location. Soon enough, I found her and sprang into action. I also had a huge leech problem. They weren't attached to me, they were attached to Drift, but for some reason they followed me around. Once I got the Bronto set up, I flew over to the female to get her attention. Quickly, I dove onto my Bronto for protection while I steeled myself for the next part. Once she de-aggroed, I shot a net gun and began chipping away at her health, very carefully. And once she was ready, I made my Bronto eat the pheromone, and the miracle of life took effect. I didn't have anything to help with my Bronto's cravings, sadly, so I just stood back and watched the magic happen. After the baby erupted from my Bronto, Mommy came back, and she was very angry and started attacking the baby, so I had to put her down. Imprinting was easy, he just wanted a cuddle. Once potted up, we headed back to the safety of home so this little guy could grow up good and proper. The morning of day 31, the baby Rhyniognatha had fully grown, and I decided to level it with tech parababies and mantis babies. When I was done with that, I wanted to run the volcano artifact cave on the back of my Rhynio. I made my way over. I'm not sure what compelled me to land in the swamp, but oh boy, I almost paid the ultimate price for it. The Capro managed to snatch me from the safety of my Rhynio's saddle. I can't really explain what you're about to witness, so I will just let you watch the footage. Yeah, you just witnessed stupidity in the highest action. After that sudden reality check, I headed back home to repair my gear and heal up a bit before I headed out again. While flying over to the volcano, I wanted to tame a snow owl. I had plans to tame an Amargasaurus at some point. I didn't really bother with one in my last 100 days on the Lost Island, so you already know the drill, yada yada. I also found some Ovis for mutton, and then I waited for this little birdie to tame up. For some reason, I abandoned the idea of running the volcano cave for now and ran the swamp artifact cave instead. You know, the one with the big ship inside. Apparently, the Rhynio works really well in here, and I made it pretty far, but eventually I had to continue on foot. I grabbed the artifact and left. There's really not much to it, honestly. When I left the cave, I had found another female Rhyniognatha, and upon seeing me on my Rhynio, she stuck to us like glue. Seriously, I could not shake her no matter how much I tried. I eventually got tired of her nonsense, so I began attacking. Apparently that was enough to make her go away, so all is well, I guess. I'd prefer not to kill the female if I can. I might need another Rhynio at some point, you know, in case the worst happens. The next cave, I couldn't take my Rhynio in, sadly, so I just had to go full send on foot. After fighting my way through hordes of bugs, snakes, and spiders, I grabbed the artifact of the Skylord. What do you want from me? That's literally all that happened. The main mission for today was to find a really good female Thery for my male back at home. I needed a stupid amount of hide for the Ascendant Rex saddle blueprint that I got on day 20, and Theries, as far as I know, were the play. I'm sure if that information is incorrect, someone will, well actually, me in my comments, even though the video is finished and it's a few months old by this point, probably. I eventually found this 130 female in the jungle near the mountains, and I decided she'd be good enough. So I got to work knocking her out. On day 33, I decided to just take it easy today and do some chores around the base and breed dinos. I also ended up taking down my starter structures, made a lot of vaults to properly organize my treasures. For real this time, you guys, I actually stayed organized in this playthrough. Can I get a W in the chat, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, by the way, shameless plug, I live stream on Twitch every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday starting at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be there, you don't want to miss it. The baby Thery for the two Theries I tamed a few paragraphs ago finally grew up, and I named her Slapchop, because it makes sense to me. We went out to farm some hides, and she was really good at her job. She was literally made for this. Anyway, later on in the day, I needed to go farm some metal too. I'm not a mathematician, but 16 Ascendant Rex saddles times the amount of hide and metal as well as fiber needed to craft all of them would equate to about, let's see, cubed, squared, a lot of materials. When we returned home, I wanted to experiment with my Rhynio and my Magmasaur. Rhynios can carry fully grown Rexes, of course, so why not a Magmasaur, right? And to my surprise, it actually worked. So with my magma sword and my Rhynio, I farmed metal nodes for the rest of the day. Rhinios have to be one of the most busted tames in Ark right now, I swear. When I got back home, I did more breeding and hatching. I normally skip over this since y'all know how breeding boss dinos goes, but cracking a lot of eggs open at once will always be satisfying. And so is this. As you can imagine, making a Rex army was going to require a lot of meat, and I needed one of the best meat farming dinos around, which was a Giga, I think. I don't know, dude, I just work here. So I set out scouring the island looking for one. I'll just tell you right now that I didn't find any. And I did a dino wipe. My search for Gigas continued all the way into day 36, and my prayers were finally answered. I found a really good level Giga, and set up the trap, 2 bear traps and 4 dino gates, the gold standard for taming one of these things. The only hard part about this process is actually getting the Giga into the trap, which I struggled with for some reason. After a few gnashes, we got the Giga in the trap eventually, and of course, knocked it out. Then I searched for an Ovis, so I could mutton tame this monster. I found some near the cliffs and the grasslands and quickly hopped back to the slumbering giant. I made it back just in time too. It was losing torpidity quickly. The Giga tamed shortly after, and this doesn't matter much in single player worlds, but I tore down the trap just because. When I got home, I saddled up the Giga and farmed an obscene amount of raw meat to feed my Rexes. Oh, and I named the Giga Walter too. You know, get it? Walter Bite. Oh man. After I was done farming, I removed my old terrible forges and replaced them with 2 brand spanking new, state-of-the-art industrial forges. It might be a bit overkill, but 2 is better than 1, and that's what they say. Day 37. I didn't do much today. I just bred boss dinos. So it is written, so it shall be done. Into day 38, I was finishing up breeding for mutations. I had a really good melee and health line going, and the lesser important stamina. The red-headed stepchild of my Rex line, who cares? I felt pretty good about the progress I was making and decided to just take it easy for the rest of the day. I needed a lot more metal for Rex saddles, and I traversed the land searching for metal nodes, and I got busy. The footage is just me farming metal. I don't really know what else to say about it. Could just, you know, keep talking, just yap away. I don't know the exact number of baby Rexes that have been blended for my amusement, but what I do know is my raw meat was running low once again, so I hatched a plan to get a lot more meat. This is probably a common method, but at the time I had a 500 IQ moment. The plan was simple: take Walter the Giga out to farm meat. Of course, I would consume a rare flower, angering nearby dinos to attack me, and then I would just use Walter to clean up shop. And that's what I did all day. Just farm meat. Man with his pet Giga. Bonding over wanton mayhem. On day 41, I went into the swamps to have that female laying egg inside of one of my fodder Rexes, so I could get another Rhynio baby. I didn't have everything on the cravings list, but I did have some stuff to help me out with those cravings. Basically, what a craving is, when your dino of choice has a baby Rhyniognatha gestating inside of it, the host dinosaur will become hungry for a random item. This may include stuff like kibble, all the way to gasoline. Anyway, since I already did the Rhynio taming process, I'm just gonna skip to the part where it lays the egg inside of my Rex. My Rex was asking for exceptional kibble, which I had an abundance of since I was breeding a ton of Rexes. Wow, amazing. I managed to get one craving down, making this new Rhynio baby slightly better than my other one, and it was quickly replaced. While my new Rhynio was growing up, I flew into the desert at night to check on loot drops and of course, on the maze. I found myself in the swamp yet again today. I needed to farm rare flowers and mushrooms to make advanced recipes, mostly shadow steak saute, which will help me with ranged DPS. Using a theory to farm mangrove trees is extremely effective at gathering mushrooms, and by the time I was done here, I had around 1,000, on top of a large amount of rare flowers and plant X seeds, which I would never use. When I got back home, I started crafting soups as well, because I wanted to tame an Amargasaurus. It was time. I finally was ready to take on this monumentous task. I did not go out and tame an Amargasaurus. In fact, I wanted to see just how crazy my new compound bow was, and ran the artifact of the Hunter Cave once again on foot. I was LARPing as Legolas from Lord of the Rings. Sure, my Ascendant shotgun probably did more damage at the end of the day, but using a bow is 1,000 times more satisfying and fun. That's what this game's all about, right? Fun? I grabbed the artifact of the hunter and left the cave. My day did not stop there, however. I still needed to farm tributes to fight the Dinopithecus king on Gamma, Beta, and eventually Alpha, so I started gathering them up. Well, yeah, I threw away the artifact I spawned in. It didn't feel right. You're welcome. Since I was going to tame an Amarga here soon, I needed to make a few sap taps, ultimately to make veggie cakes. So I made about 8 sap taps and headed to the closest redwood tree I could find. I used my Rhynio and Sinnoh to get a tap. When that task was complete, I flew with my Theory, Slapchop, and my Rhynio Buzzkill. I named the Rhynio Buzzkill, by the way. I heard you could get sap from farming trees in the desert, but I didn't find any. I'm sure I did this wrong, and I will admit when I make a mistake. Enjoy it while it lasts. It won't happen again. Day 45 apparently does not exist. I probably forgot to hit record. When we cut to day 46, I had a Yutyrannus in my clutches, and it was nibbling away at Buzzkill. I guess I found a decent level in the mountains and decided to fly with it back home. And it was a process to get back since Buzzkill's stamina depleted very quickly, and I had to land in the redwoods. It could have spelled disaster with all the Dinopithecus that were wandering around, but hey, I managed to escape with my cargo intact. Also, I just noticed an Amargasaurus sitting there at my base. It's been a month since I last looked at this footage for this 100 days video, and I guess I tamed it on day 45, but day 45 doesn't exist. I dropped the Yutyrannus off in the Thunderdome and began to tame it on foot. I've done this sort of thing more times than I can count, which isn't very high, but just know that I knocked it out. Now to get down to business. To make a full 19 Ascendant Rex saddles, I had the tall order of gathering well over 70,000 hide. Needless to say, I had my work cut out for me for the next few days. Slapchop was ready and willing to accept her new challenge head on, and we got to work. For the rest of the day, it was just on site with anything that was unfortunate enough to cross our paths. So enjoy this brief montage of Slapchop and myself turning things into shredded cheese. Alright, so on day 47, I don't really have anything much in my notes. It just looks like I've tamed another Amargasaurus. By the way, here's a cheat code for taming an Amargasaurus, just flying to the volcano zone. And here's another wild strat. You don't have to stay in the volcanic area. You can just leave and go into the grasslands and kill Sarcos and raptors, and it counts. And I got this Amargasaurus tamed up, no sweat. Literally the easiest tame. Easiest tame. Oh yeah, I also tamed a Daeodon, mostly just to heal my Rex army. It doesn't have much of an impact on this playthrough, I just want you to know that I got one. And on day 48, I leveled Boss Rexes. I'm not going to talk about it much. On day 49, I got the last of the Rexes leveled, and the Yutyrannus. But I did need more healers, so I went out and tamed a couple more Daeodon to help out with this monumentous task. On day 50, it was time. It was time to fight the Dinopithecus King on Gamma. Would I be able to take on this monumentous task? This fate that was bestowed upon me. This was a life or death situation. The Dinopithecus King in the arena for the... How many times did I fight this guy by now? For the 4th time. When I went in, I was scared. But then we just actually killed him really easy. It wasn't even a fight, honestly. It was kind of like a massacre. But anyway, now all that was left to do was just fight the Big D on Beta and Alpha. On day 51, I went right back to breeding Rexes, and I decided to take another crack at my polymer farm since the last time it didn't go so well. It worked, sure, but it wasn't at the capacity I was hoping for. And on day 52, I went and I got 2 more artifacts and farmed Thylus for claws. While hopping around, I found a 130 female Giga and rushed home to prepare to tame her. On day 53, I tamed that female Giga. She managed to slip out of the trap, and I safari tamed her. It was kind of fun, but unfortunately, this snake ruined some of its taming effectiveness. On day 54, I managed to kill 2 basilisks for their scales, and I got the artifact of the hunter. And for some reason, as hard as I looked, there were no Spinos spawning in. I'm not sure why. On day 55, I raced Bitey, my new Giga, and then I killed Megalodons for teeth. On day 56, I took Bitey out to fight another Giga, and got its heart. The only thing that was missing now were the Spinosaurs and some Rexes. Day 57 was still looking for Spinos, but they didn't spawn in. I have no idea what's going on with the spawns on this map. On day 58, I took on this insane challenge to try and kill this Giga with a Managarmr, and I won. So that's pretty neat. Yeah, I didn't think I'd win either. On day 59, I didn't really feel like raising brand new Rexes, so I just leveled my backups. I'm sure the saddles would just hard carry them anyway. On day 60, I finally killed a couple of Spinos for their sails. It was about time. Day 61, I built a pig pen thing for the Phiomia and did a maze run. And I got another good shotgun. Day 62, I went into the Aberration Cave, tried to find some Feroxes, but none of them were spawning in, so I just went to the Magmasaur Cave. On day 63, I stole all the Magmasaur eggs I could carry. When I got home, I cried up all the boss Rexes and let them hang out at the obelisk. And that's where the fragments happen. I made the stupid decision to live stream my 100 days here on YouTube and Twitch, and the YouTube VODs are missing, and so are the Twitch VODs, so that's where the fragmented parts come in. The last footage I do have is me fighting the Dinopithecus King on Beta, and I did this live for you guys, here on YouTube. I don't think that Rex is gonna make it in. This is probably overkill for Beta anyway, honestly. All these Rexes have like around 50,000 health to 1,000-ish melee, so Yeah, and they're pretty heavily mutated, so I think we're just gonna steamroll this guy. Oh, he woke up! I didn't have to shoot him, he just kinda woke up in a bad mood. Everybody, this isn't a drill. He's right on my cheeks. Forget the little ones, we're gonna fight the big cheese. Oh my god, he's coming. Yeah. He's on his way! Everybody, attack the giant monkey! Attack the big one! Get him! Everybody, come back! Do not chase the big monkey! Do not chase— I repeat! Do not chase the big monkey! Oh, the AI in this game, I swear. Wow, that's pretty cool, Chad. Thank you. Do not chase the giant ape. I swear to God, I will turn you all into Giga Chow. I'm not even playing. Where did he even go? I don't know where he went. Oh, by the way, I got lucky with a blueprint, so I do have Ascendant saddles on these Rexes. So, they're pretty stacked. That's another reason why I went with Rexes for this playthrough. Everybody, focus down the giant one. Do not chase him across the map. Stay here. Do not chase the giant ape, I repeat. He's right there. Kill him. I need to flee the scene. Please get out of my way. The period key is not working. This fight isn't hard at all, it's just super stressful because the darn AI doesn't listen. But we're making some good headway here, I admit. Okay, now you can chase the big monkey. I don't even care anymore. Just go. Just get out of here. I'm taking damage. This is concerning. Get him. Get that Rafiki-looking bastard. Bite! Bite! Kick and scratch and snarl. Dog, I think I'm dying. I think I'm dying. I'm actually dying. I don't have any med brews on me. I made a huge mistake. I've made a gargantuan mistake by not bringing med brews. Dude, this just got serious. Please, kill him. I'm dying. Please, for daddy, kill the monkey. Yes! Oh, God. We clutched out a win with that one. I'm pretty sure I'm half past dead. Good lord. Good God, we cut that one close. Holy moly. I forgot med brews like a 5 head. Good God. Getting all of my gear repaired is going to cost me a fortune. Yeah, we clutched out a W with that one. Wow. I legit almost thought I was gonna die. Like I said, this wasn't a hardcore playthrough. I just really haven't died yet, and I don't plan on it. If I can make it a 100 days without dying, I'll just like package it as a hardcore video because people like that. Maybe. My last 100 days hardcore video did terribly, but we'll see. Yes, 231. Element. We're Gucci. We're in the big leagues now. I get comments like that on my videos like, oh wow, what kind of 100 days video is this? You're using S+. Shut up, nerd. S+ makes this game bearable. And that's when the problems start. I was swimming in the ocean, looking for a Tuso to get its tentacles, and then the first crash happened. When I logged back in, everything was missing, and I tried to do a recovery build, and then my PC crashed again. And then I said, screw it, I just want to fight the Dinopithecus King on Alpha, that's the whole point of this video, the 100 days is just a secondary note. And my PC blue screened again, and I got frustrated and uninstalled Ark. So, unfortunately, I could not defeat the Dinopithecus King. I didn't even make it to 100 days. I just hope you guys cut me some slack.